going to give you a little bit of an overview of what's going on in research in MSA. I want to really emphasize to you that although we don't have a cure, and the things that Dr. Palmer pointed out to you, we are moving forward, right? There's a lot of interest in MSA. There are a number of companies that are trying to develop compounds to fix MSA and to also improve the symptoms of MSA. And I want to help you see what you can do to speed up that process too. So our knowledge is building, and we are also recognizing MSA sooner and more accurately. So where are we now? We have a population of people that have MSA. We follow around 500, 600 of these patients at our center, so we know what happens with the symptoms, we know how they're changing over time, and we have a good understanding of the progression of MSA. But we want to develop compounds. This is what we need to get to you. This is what we need to get to your loved ones. We need to get medications or treatments that both make you feel better, like Dr. Palmer spoke about, and also make you progress less fast. And in order to do that, we need drug development. And in order to have good drug development, we need to have this done seriously. So we need our partners in the pharmaceutical industry, and sometimes the pharmaceutical industry gets a bad rap, right? You see it in the press. But I can tell you that we are speaking with a number of scientists from pharmaceutical companies that are so smart, are so dedicated, and are brilliant scientists that are really dedicated in bringing treatments to MSA, and that can only be a good thing. And we also need those pharmaceutical partners working with academic clinicians like Alberto and the other physicians we have in the consortium, so they understand what is important for patients and how to measure them. So we have this, right? We have a network of patients, we have a network of investigators, we have partners in the pharmaceutical industry, and then we have a pipeline. Now we have a pipeline for getting drugs into the clinic. And we have collective academic groups working together so that when new treatments are available, they can be tested in good sites where people know MSA and can follow the patients well and safely. So we're moving forward. We have the availability of several potential therapies that prevent or delay MSA, and that's an important advancement, right? We're in a stronger position now than we were 4 or 5 years ago. But the success of future clinical trials hinges upon us having good quality natural history data, knowing how the people progress without a treatment, and sensitive ways to measure changes, like surveys, like biomarkers, like some things filled by the clinician and some things filled by the patients. But we collectively, you as patients and us as academic researchers, we need to be ready for clinical trials, right? We need to know what to measure, what to look for safety, and how best to do that. So what we have and what we run at NYU is a natural history study of multiple system atrophy. So what is this? This is a collaborative framework of different investigators. We have 17 sites across the world, right, that are following patients in MSA specialist clinics and providing their data to us so that we can look at the different features over time. We can look at the rating scales, and we can say, oh, this rating scale appears good, this rating scale doesn't, and we can modify those things. We can also we can look at which interventions are working, which treatments provide symptomatic benefit, which treatments prolong life or improve quality of life. So we have a lot of information that's coming in from this established collaborative framework, which is good news for you, right? We've united academic research institutions from Europe, from the US, from South America, from Australia, and even the Middle East that have a specific interest in following patients with MSA. So that's good. We have a framework. So what hurdles do we need to come? When I started writing this, I was going to tell you, like, in scientific terms, where we need to go. And of course, you all know MSA is a rare disease. But then I thought, like, I'm going to pose 3 questions to you, right? Because these are really, like, things that are important to us. And I think that they're also important to you at some level. So how many of you thought that it took too long to actually receive the diagnosis of MSA, right? We need to get that quicker, right? How many of you would like better treatments for MSA? We need to do a better job, right? And how many of you wished more doctors knew about MSA? Okay, So those, when I go back and tell you about the scientific terms, I want you to remember those things, because basically that's what we're trying to do for you, right? We need to have a lot more patients participate, right? MSA is a rare disease, so we need to motivate everybody. We need to bring them together, and I'm going to tell you how we're going to do that. We need to improve diagnostic precision, particularly in the early stages of the disease. We need to pick up MSA sooner, right? We need to find sensitive ways to measure changes over time, both in problems with movement, problems with blood pressure, how you feel, and we need better ways of doing that. And we also need to provide education to young physicians that are coming into our clinic, so they learn what is MSA and they can pass on that information to and when they see a patient with MSA, and I want to tell you later on how you're going to help me do that, or you're going to help us do that. So what's a natural history study, right? Well, a natural history study is an observational study. It's not a clinical trial. It's just taking your clinical information that's collected at a visit. It's not giving it, you may be treated with other things, but we're not necessarily giving you those treatments. We're just following what happens to you, right? So it's following the evolution. I told you before that in MSA you have problems with this insulation of the nerves, and we know that the insulation gets damaged over time, and what that leads to is a progressive deterioration in function, right? I've no need to tell you that, you're living with the disease. As Dr. Palmer told you, on average we're diagnosing MSA 3.5 years after the onset of the first symptom. What we would like to be able to do is to move this diagnosis. So instead of 3.5 years, it's much sooner, right? We need to be able to pick it up sooner when there's less nerve damage, when we have more of a chance of saving the nerves and slowing down the progression when function is good. So being able to diagnose it sooner and improving that diagnostic accuracy will allow us to intervene with compounds that save function sooner, right? So that's why we want to be able to pick up MSA sooner. And we need good ways to measure what's happening in MSA over time, so that we have good ways of showing that compounds work or they don't work, right? And we need fast ways of doing this, right? There are 4 or 5 compounds that everybody wants to, develop as drugs for MSA. We need to know that if we try one, we need to be able to say quickly whether it's working or it's not working, so we can move on to the other, right? So we have our work cut out in finding those fast biomarkers, right? Whether be they clinical, be they MRIs, be they whatever they may be, we need to make sure they're good and fast. So one of the things that we would like to be able to do as part of the natural history study is to create an image bank. So when you have an MRI, that information is super important. That information could live within a structured database. We could give other researchers access to that information, so they would be able to look at, like Dr. Palmer told you, those particular signs that you see on an MRI, because we think that they're going to be a good imaging biomarker to see, okay, there's a sign that this compound is working, okay, there isn't, like a go or no go for clinical trials, right? And we would also like to build a brain bank. It's a difficult subject, right? But right now there is no blood test for MSA, right? There's nothing we can do. So if we can harvest tissue, we can use that tissue to potentially develop something that may help us pick up MSA faster. We can use that tissue to help us understand changes in the brain, why certain things happen. So that information and brain donation is an incredibly important part of the process of research. So I'm not going to go through this in detail, but this is kind of what a visit in the natural history study looks like. It's questionnaires, it's talking, it's finding about symptoms, it's having your smell tested, it's having a neurological exam where somebody's like scoring your movement, scoring your walking, and looking in fine detail at that. Autonomic testing to check your blood pressure, samples of blood to store, right? Everybody wants to use cerebral spinal fluid with a spinal tap, but wouldn't it be nicer to have a blood test that didn't involve you having a spinal tap, right? So we're moving forward in trying to think in ways that we can test these biomarkers that are not as labor intensive for you or painful. We want to be able to collect DNA. We don't think there's any direct hereditary inheritance of MSA, but there may be certain genes that make you more susceptible to it. And we'd like to be able to look at those with one of our partners at NIH. We are fortunate enough to have funding from the Michael J. Fox Foundation that allows us to study changes in the eye as a potential biomarker for MSA. So we're interested if you have an eye scan, an optical coherence tomography scan. We're also looking at bladder changes, MRIs, and other biomarkers that we're looking at. So we really, like, when we see somebody in a natural history study at any of these sites, we perform intensive testing, but all testing that should be, for the most part, a part of clinical care. So we are helping to be ready for clinical trials. We're sharing data, samples, images to help other researchers. We're using this benchmark information to help drug development and drug approval. And now we think we can plan better clinical trials with a better chance of success. And we hope we can prove that when we find a drug that slows down to the progression, we can get it approved faster. So that's why the information of you, even if you're not in a clinical trial, just being followed in the natural history study is critically important. So we need to seize this opportunity to build on the collaboration we have, right? I mean, we put together this natural history study. It took us 11 years. Now we really need to use that mechanism in the best possible way. So that was our part. Now let me tell you what you can do, right? First of all, number one, participate, right? Anybody with MSA, regardless of what stage of the disease they're in, can participate in the natural history study. Whether you're in the advanced stages, whether you're in the early stages, it's all interesting information that helps in these various different ways. Stay connected, right? You mentioned the global MSA registry, and we'll find you can find that online, or we can make sure you have that information. And if anybody wants, I can sit down and register them with you. But that's a way of staying connected. Share information, right? You have great social media. You have a network of people here. If you find out about a clinical trial through our center, through another good center, and Alberto is going to tell you how to find that information, share information with your friends. Even if you don't qualify to participate in that trial, your friend may, right? We need to get the word out. We're a small community, but we have to stay connected. Now, the final thing I just want to focus on, and I think this is really important, right? I want you to help us train new doctors, right? MSA is a super rare disease, right? And many times I hear this story, well, I spend a lot of time with the resident. I spend a lot of time with the fellows. Let me tell you, that's a golden opportunity, right? That's a golden opportunity to teach somebody about MSA. And I'm going to give you each a piece of homework when you go home today, because I want you to have your history of MSA well planned out so you repeat those stories, right? Our job as people in the MSA field of clinical research is to educate the next generation of people so that they're good at picking up MSA, they're accurate at picking MSA up, and they can know when they should treat and how to treat people. So these MSA people, like Dr. Palmer told you, show up in all kinds of clinics, right? It's not that we can just go to the neurology clinic. We have to go to neurologists. We have to go to urologists, the sleep doctors, the autonomic doctors, the movement disorder specialists, and the ear, nose, and throat people, right? With some of the more rare presentations like Strider. So find out, right? Go home and tell me, what did you start with, right? Because when you encounter those people, what we want to be able to do is set the seed in their head of like, oh, this is MSA. This is really rare. This was the story of this patient, right? Ataxia, right? I mean, if you tell the clinical fellow, I started with ataxia, the clinical fellow hears the word ataxia, but tell the story, right? When you started noticing what, right? I turned quickly and I was falling. I noticed that. I had less arm swing when I was playing golf, and somebody noticed that. Put in that person's a seed of information that they're going to remember your face when they see somebody with the same symptoms, right? REM behavior disorder, like Alberto, tell the story. Like, I woke up and I was killing my cat because I thought he was a raccoon, right? I mean, put something in the mind of somebody that remembers that when they hear somebody who, oh, he was problems turning. Oh, he was acting out dreams. I saw a patient with MSA. This could be MSA. Set the seed next time, right? This is your job to get this information into their hands. Autonomic dysfunction, right? Fainting after meals, could be a sign of low blood pressure, neurogenic OH. Erectile dysfunction, getting up to pee again and again at night because you have nocturia, right? Urinary urgency, put that story together, so I started with REM behavior disorder, then I noticed this, then I noticed this. The fellow's gonna remember the next time they see somebody with potential MSA that they should think, this is not just a regular prostate problem, right? Laughing, and then some of the rare things that happen, note them down, like laughing and crying, right? Like sometimes people have these episodes where they will laugh and then they will cry, called pseudoboba affect. I mean, tell people that, right? So they're recognizing some of the rarer presentations of MSA. So go home, get your stories, and be prepared to tell them. Be prepared to educate people, right? We want to put in the mind of the doctor, next time he or she encounters somebody with MSA, I should be thinking of this, right? Even if it's rare, we need to make sure that people are thinking of that MSA as an option. So finally, I'm going to pass it over to Alberto, and he's going to explain through how clinical research is a reason for you to stay hopeful. Thank you very much.